Hey, Mindy, it's so awesome to have you on the Everything Saxophone podcast. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Donna, I've watched your stuff and, watched you online and listened to your podcasts, and just what you're doing is really cool. I'm honored to be a part of it and finally be on it. So, nice to talk dorky sax stuff. For a while too. I don't get this chance all the time. I'm out there playing. No one wants to talk about it. They just want to hear the band. So this is super fun. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, cool. And I'm really flattered. So thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, we especially, now we're going to talk about the times that we're going through right now during this pandemic, but I just want to keep people happy, keep them motivated to practice, to play, be inspired. And just all the stuff that you do is so inspiring. So, but before I get to the stuff that you're doing now, can you tell people a little bit about your background, where you grew up, what it was like? I'm going to ask some, questions about, some of the saxophone stuff that you were doing, obviously, but tell us a little bit about your background.
I grew up, I was born in St. Petersburg, Florida, and I grew up basically on the road with my father's band. My dad had a band called the Entertainers, and it was kind of a blue-eyed soul band, really high energy, fun. We didn't have a house until I was almost 5.
Wow.
And we just went city to city, and I grew up as, a kid of someone that was in a band. So I would watch my dad play. He played saxophone, all the saxophones, and B3 organ, and it was just a blast. What a crazy way to grow up. But finally, the band broke up, and we moved to St. Petersburg, Florida. And I started piano lessons when I was 5.
Mm.
And in school band, my teacher, Ann Reynolds, she laid out all the instruments out on the ground and just said, hey, look over everything and tell me, what you want to play, pick out an instrument, and we'll learn how to play them. And I walked around and I saw the saxophone, and I just thought, my dad looked like he was having a blast playing the saxophone every night. And I wanted to have that much fun. And so I chose the saxophone, and I've absolutely never looked back. It became just a very cool part of me, and became something that I found an identity in even that early. I was, 8 years old. So it was a really fun way to kind of find myself and grow up.
Did you I grew up and I played trumpet, and we're basically the same age. Did you get any flack, any flack from your classmates, or was it did you how do I want to word this? Being a girl playing a traditionally male instrument, did you get any flack or any problems with that?
I have to just give big thank yous to my parents and to my teacher and my friends. No one told me it was odd for a girl to play saxophone until it was too late. Absolutely too late.
Wow.
I was just into it, and I just didn't realize that it wasn't done, or it wasn't considered the norm. And I've talked to so many people since that have told me all these stories. Oh, I was told I couldn't play saxophone because I'd get buck teeth, or no, I was made to play flute because girls play flute, or just
Yeah.
every story in the book. And I really didn't run into anything specific that I wasn't supposed to be a girl playing a saxophone until I went to get into college. And I got a door slammed in my face with that.
Wow.
So that was the first time I really realized, oh, you mean we're not all cool and equal? I grew up a total hippie kid that doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man or black or white or gay or straight. It's all good, right? I learned that no, it's not all good all the time.
Gosh, that's cool though. That's really good because I myself got a lot of flack. playing trumpet, and lots of doors slammed, lots of doors trying to be slammed, and me always fighting back. And, it's inspiring. And, I hope, and I think the day will come fairly soon. And I couldn't have said this 20 years ago, but the day that will come fairly soon where it's just not going to be an issue. Like you just said, it's just, oh, you play horn, you play this, you play that, and you're awesome. It doesn't matter, whether you're a woman or a man or whatever. But that's cool. Thank you for sharing that. Now, let me ask you. So your dad was probably your first teacher, I would assume.
No, actually, my dad would not teach me. I had a grandmother who was an opera singer, and a father who was a professional musician, and neither of them would teach me. They both really held close the thought that if you teach your kid music, that you're putting this undue pressure on them, or you're, kind of pushing them, and maybe they'll hate you at some point, or,
Wow.
for that. Now, whether that's the truth, or, in real life, whether that's what happens or not, who knows? But I really had to find it myself. And it wasn't hard to find a love of music around my house. I mean, my grandmother would come over and sing arias and play piano with me, and it was fun. And my dad, once his band broke up, he started putting together 8 rock bands a year that would tour the US. And so I was always in their practice rooms, or they were over at our house recording. So I had music around me all the time. But did I have lessons? No, I probably had 3 private lessons from the time that I started playing to the time I went to college.
Wow.
So I was very much self-taught, and taught, in the confines of a band room, like a school band program, which was great. I was lucky enough to have that.
And I'm going to make an assumption too. You must have had a really good school band program.
We did have a really good school band program, and it was really just a lot of people who cared, and great teachers, and it was fun to be a part of. And I totally immersed. I mean, basically anything that school offered that was musical, I just, immersed in. And it was choir and marching band. I became the drum major, and,
Cool.
symphonic band, and just everything. And I really, kind of took it to the limit. I would try out for all the all state. I wanted the all state jazz band, so I was in a couple of the symphonic bands early on, but then definitely all state jazz band. I was the first chair alto sax, so that was it. Was all cool to me. I just wanted to be a part of anything musical.
I'm curious, so at age 5, you started on piano, and then you took up saxophone a couple years later. Your early training on the piano, were you taught like typical, like read and play, here's the Hanon book, and, or did you have someone teach you like, here's some songs, learn them by ear?
Now, see, I love that question, because if I were putting someone into piano lessons, I would want the latter, what you just said.
Yeah.
I would love someone to, say, here's this song, and here's kind of how to pick it out by ear, and here's how to play and think about it. I took lessons from a woman that was an older woman, and she was very classically trained,
Okay.
and she was very into the classical repertoire, and that was it. So, I learned, pedal technique, and Chopin, and Bach, and Haydn, and, all the classics. And then I would start to bring in, like I was into a Toto record. So I came in and I was like, check out this Toto song. Yeah, that did not go over well. She was like, what do you mean you didn't learn your Chopin piece this week, but you learned a song by a rock band? Oh no, this is not acceptable. But it taught me, technique, and it taught me how to read, and it taught me so much. I look back, but I think I was looking for something more too.
Yeah, and let me dive into this a little bit deeper too. So I know with a lot of school band programs, myself included, it was read and play at the same time. When did you start to, learn by ear, so to speak? Was it just probably you yourself saying, oh, I like that Toto song, or I like this song, and let me just try to figure it out like a guitar player would?
Yeah, I would play along to records or play along to, MTV. I mean, MTV was a big one for me. I was
Yeah.
watching, Tina Turner Strutter stuff
Yeah.
and Aerosmith and Clarence Clemens out there rocking the sax bigger than life and James Brown and watching Maceo play. It was a really cool time for sax players, but I really learned a lot from singers too. So I would play along with singers. Later on, I got a few David Sanborn records.
Mm.
He was this kind of cool link to me of, I had been listening to singers and rock bands and pop bands. That's what I was into. I didn't grow up with a lot of jazz. Um, and all of a sudden, I get introduced to this saxophone player, David Sanborn, who it sounded like pop music to me. It sounded current and cool. And he was like a lead singer on saxophone, and it had emotion and it had, oomph.
Yeah.
And I loved that. And so he was kind of this missing link to me saying, hey, all those singers you're playing along with, Nancy Wilson from Heart and Tina Turner and Aerosmith, and, that you could do that on a saxophone. And that was like, ding, that
Yeah.
makes all the sense in the world to me.
Wow, that everything that you're saying, I could absolutely relate to, because again, we grew up in the same time period, and um, when MTV came out, they actually played music videos and they had concerts. What a concept! And
Yeah, I know.
um,
Those days are long gone. Stop it.
I know. It's just crazy. If people aren't aware, so MTV came out, I think, in 1981 or something, and everybody was glued to their TVs because it really was revolutionary. And I never forget, every Saturday night they brought a concert like REO Speedwagon. I love that group. Journey,
Yeah.
love that group, right? All the
Yeah.
all the great 80s bands. And oh my gosh, you're bringing back so many memories. But what you just said, though, with David Sanborn being like a vocalist on the saxophone and bringing that out, and just the light bulb going off, that's really cool. That's inspirational, and that's a great advice for people too, who many people may not be interested in straight ahead jazz, but they certainly like David Sanborn.
Yeah. I mean, look, for me, I didn't get into saxophone because I knew it was a jazz instrument or I knew it as a classical instrument or any of that. I got into it because it seemed loud and raucous and fun. And, it just seemed like it was a party to play it. So I really just went with what was around me as an influence. And jazz didn't come into my view until a little bit later. High school was when I kind of started being aware of David Sanborn and some of these other bands like Spyro Gyra and the Yellow Jackets and uh, bands like that were kind of doing interesting instrumental music. And I got into jazz band, which then gave me a few of the classics to kind of learn from. But I mean, my first week in college, I remember someone asking me, well, hey, you know, are you into traditional jazz or contemporary jazz? And I just looked at him and went, I don't know the difference, So, I
Yeah.
mean, here I am, a music student in a college, and I didn't know who half those musicians were that played jazz. So I had a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, this is really interesting because I was actually going to ask you that. You had some jazz background in high school and stuff, but how did you, I know you spent a year in University of was it North Florida?
Yeah.
Okay, and so was that the start of possibly, studying some of the traditional jazz, some Charlie Parker stuff, Cannibal Adderley, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it was my first year of college. Basically, the teacher who had been the head improvisation teacher at North Texas State University, his name was Rich Madison. He was an incredible jazz educator. at North Texas State. And University of North Florida hired him away and said, please start a jazz program for us. We would like a music program here rooted in jazz that we could be proud of. So my first year of college was his first year starting his jazz program there. And he recruited me and gave me a full scholarship, which was amazing. My parents didn't have any money. My father was a musician. Come on. um, and, I didn't have a cent. So it was really a perfect scenario for me. And Bill Prince was my saxophone teacher there. And he was just incredible. So that was a year for me of really immersing in this traditional jazz education system. I learned what improvisation was. I learned what chord changes were. I learned who Charlie Parker was and Miles Davis and John Coltrane. And, all the music that I played was incredibly traditional, straight ahead, standards. And it was amazing. That was a whole new world for me. And it was incredible. It was just like jumping in the deep end of a pool and going, wow, you just, it was this flood of information and I just soaked it all in and I loved it. But at the end of the year, I really thought, I'd had these conversations with people and people were saying, but you listen to this other music. I was listening to David Sanborn of the Yellow Jackets and, rock bands and pop bands. And they're like, those people are selling out and we're not selling out. We are the tradition. And, if you play that kind of music, you're a sellout. And I had to sit there and think. And I went, no, this is the music that I grew up with, that I really connect with. That's not selling out. Playing something that's not what you connect with is selling out. So it's
Wow.
different for different people. And I realized that the traditional jazz pathway was not my pathway. I loved it. I wanted to know how to play it, and I wanted it to be a part of my, my knowledge and vocabulary and all of it, because I respect it so much. But I knew it wasn't what I was going to do for the rest of my life, was be a traditional jazz artist. So I looked at different schools that could offer me something more than just a traditional jazz education, because I knew that's not what I was, meant to do. So that's what led me to Berklee College of Music. It was, it was a place that, had rock ensembles and funk ensembles and fusion and R&B and world music and just, all these kind of things that I was so interested in. So that opened my world further.
Wow, this is great because I was going to ask you that question, why you went from, North Florida to Berkeley. And let me ask you this: you studied with Joe Viola and George Garzone, but George Garzone is a traditional jazz player. So when you were taking lessons with those guys, did you still work on jazz vocabulary, or what kinds of things did you cover?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Viola was one of the biggest draws for me to Berklee College of Music. I had some of Joe's books and I just thought, this man is the Yoda of the saxophone. He's just, he is, the knowledge of saxophone in one small human being. And I would go into his office every week and take a lesson. And Joe would say, have you started your own band yet?
Wow.
I want you to start your own band. I want you to play your own music. You come at this instrument from a different angle, and you have to find you and cultivate you. And then we get into the lessons. And his lessons were very art of saxophone. They weren't jazz vocabulary, they weren't how to improvise. It was literally how to play the saxophone and be a solid player, whether it be technique of articulation or, time recognition, pitch recognition, playing in tune, playing, all the way up and down the horn at the same, level, the same nuance, the same volume, having the same kind of texture all the way through. So he was very much play the saxophone and be amazing at the art of playing the saxophone. Whereas when I walked in George Garzone's office, he'd turn off all the lights and play some cluster chord on piano and say, "Play me the darkest note in that chord."
Oh.
And, I'd play a note that I thought was the darkest, and we'd talk about why I thought it was the darkest or why he thought something. And George was a heady, uh, just intellectual about how to think about the fringe of music. And he had a band called The Fringe, which was uh, amazing. But I mean, here was a guy that was just looking at taking the confines of music and just breaking them down. So he made me think about music differently. And I have a friendship with George to this day. And I had tea with him a couple years ago when I went back to Berkeley for something. And I said to him, I didn't become the sax player you would have wanted me to. I know he loves the outside kind of fringy world of freer jazz. Um, but I said, you just taught me so much, and you made me a deeper musician, and you showed me things that I would have never found on my own, and just different pathways of thinking about chords and melodies and how to play. So, both those guys as teachers were just phenomenal for me.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that, because I was going to ask you, like, if you could remember one particular exercise or concept from each teacher. But I think you kind of covered that, unless you could think of something, off the top of your head, that one particular exercise or concept that really changed, the way you play.
Yeah, I mean, for Joe Viola, Joe just had Joe just had stacks and stacks of repertoire of saxophone and woodwinds in general. He was this fountain of knowledge and books of technique, and that's what he was just incredible at. And one thing I look back on, I now have a file cabinet full of all the books that he gave me. He'd give me a book or two a week
Oh, wow.
and say, go copy them and bring them back. This was, before everything was on the internet.
Yeah.
And he knew I didn't have a dime to my name to go buy these books at that time. So, I'd go to the local copy store and I'd copy them and I'd bring them back to him and I'd practice what was in them. And so I now have this incredible library of, classical technique books for saxophone that I'll pull out every now and then. So rather than tell you one exercise that he gave me, the guy gave me a library for a lifetime.
Wow.
What a gift,
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh.
That was amazing. And as for George Garzone, I just remember every week I'd come in, he had a piece of paper, a piece of, like 10 stave music paper, and he would write an exercise for that week. And it was a full page,
Hmm.
and it was completely random. There were no patterns, there were no chord structures that were notable. It was just notes that were on a page that he, it either meant something to him or maybe it didn't or whatever, but he'd write one out every week and that's what you were to practice.
Huh.
And I just think the way his brain worked and the way his thought processes worked, it opened you up and opened your thinking up and your playing up. It got you out of the world of play this jazz lick in every key and come back next week.
Yeah.
No, it was go play all these random notes and open up your brain. Boom, go.
Wow. Wow. That is so cool.
Yeah, he was a cool guy.
Let me ask you also, in terms of embouchure. So I'm going to maybe backtrack a little bit, but you're able to play really, really super high. You've got you got a massive sound. Um, what were some of the embouchure types of exercises that you worked on? Whether it was during your school band years or whether it was college, was there any concepts or exercises that stood out for you that were influential?
As far as embouchure and kind of tone production go, I was pretty uh, street trained on that. I didn't do a lot of kind of sit down and look at a book or you know do that with a teacher. My concept of tone and embouchure, it really came from uh, listening to people and then just sitting down and kind of being that person that would sit down and try and figure out, okay, if I hear that sound, how do I get that sound on a saxophone? Like I loved the sound of Cannonball's saxophone.
Yeah.
He had tons of technique and tons of just cool phrasing and amazing style, but that sound
Mm.
was amazing. So that's what just set him apart from so many people, was he had this soulful, big, rich sound. And I would just sit and go, okay, what do you have to do? Am I opening up my throat a little more? Am I it was literally just sitting there going, wow, how does he get that? Or even a singer, someone like Ann Wilson from Heart.
Yeah.
It's like I loved the way her voice would open up, and I loved the fact that there was a little grit to it, but there was a clarity. And so how do you get that clarity as a saxophonist and bring in a little grit here and there? So it was less exercises on embouchure and more thinking, okay, I like that tone. I'm going to go after, elements in that tone of Cannonball's saxophone or Junior Walker's
Mm.
saxophone or, Tina Turner's voice or, Stevie Wonder, that tonality. So it was just kind of trying to find it as a mad scientist in my own little room.
What's really cool, as a little bit of a recap before I go on. So I had asked that question about, like you had taken piano at age 5 and it's very, classically oriented, old school, read and play, that kind of thing. And you had said that you had wished you had the latter training, the training I talked about where you take a song and you learn it. Yet that's what you did. Instinctively you did that. And yes, your background with your dad's bands and being on the road for your first 5 years, but also still being around that for many, many years, I think allowed you to use your ears, open up your ears, and allowed you to realize that that was a viable way to also learn how to not only just how to play the saxophone, but how to play music and how to find your own style and your own person. And as Joe Viola said to you, when are you starting a band? Because you approach it differently.
Yeah, every week that guy would ask me that. And what a cool thing, to have someone when you're that young, say to you every week, start your own, start your own, and really put it into you that that's a good thing, to really kind of instill in this young student the idea that, what you're doing is viable. Go do it. Be out there, be different. You don't have to be the next, John Coltrane, and you don't have to be the next Charlie Parker, because there were definitely people that were in school with me who were doing everything they could to be the next John Coltrane or the next Michael Brecker or the next Charlie Parker or the next Kenny Garrett, or and God bless them, they were all amazing saxophonists. But as Joe Viola said to me, those guys exist and they've had a career. There was a David Sanborn, there was a John Coltrane. You being another one doesn't make you cool. It's cool that you can play some of that stuff, but it's not going to give you the success you want as you, and it's not going to be as meaningful to you if you're just copying someone else. So I thought he gave great advice early on, and I took it.
Wow. That is fantastic advice. And let me digress for a second. What advice would you give to a saxophone player today who, wants to find their own sound? Like if you had someone that was studying with you and, um, they were playing all these Coltrane licks and these Charlie Parker licks and all this kind of stuff, but they felt like they weren't true to themselves. What would you say to them? What kind of exercises or things would you have them do?
I think that sometimes, when we're starting out as players and you're kind of finding yourself even, as a young person, you don't really respect the stuff that you grew up with that much. You just think, "Oh, well, yeah, I grew up with that kind of music," or, but I'm supposed to learn jazz, or, you've got this kind of shiny thing in front of you, or I'm supposed to be this. Or you see someone that's amazing at saxophone and you're like, well, I want to be that. It's kind of like we as women, oh my God, if I could only have that hair, that would be amazing. You know what? That's not the hair you were born with. You can try, but whatever. But at the end of the day, maybe years later, you're like, no, I like my hair. Screw that girl. I like my own hair because, but I think we as saxophonists and musicians of all sorts, sometimes we look at what we grew up with and we don't take stock of it and we don't really relate it to who we could become. And, we just look at something shiny in front of us and go, well, that's what people expect me to become, or that's what it takes to be successful. I'm going to become that. Whereas I really think we should each reach inside of us and go, what is meaningful to me? I don't have to become something that people tell me I should become. And I don't have to reach for what is expected. Chances are that's already been done. But what would I have to say that could be different than anyone else on the planet? What would be meaningful to me that would speak to my childhood or my, young adulthood, that would create music that's really meaningful to me, that speaks about who I am and my life. And you look at these artists who have done that, and the success they can have is monumental because no one else is doing what they're doing, and it's meaningful to them. People like Miles Davis did music like no one else did. Joni Mitchell wrote music that was meaningful to her and became just huge. Even someone like I mean, just so many artists out there doing that. But we can get stuck in these ruts of, well, I need to, play jazz like Charlie Parker did, or I need to have a sound like John Coltrane did. No, why not reach back? I listened to a lot of rock and roll in my, childhood. And you know what? It's a part of me, and it's something that is a total happy place for me. There is a zen to loud rock and roll guitars for me. I'm not saying anyone else. That is a total happy place. And so that's a part of my music, and maybe it's not a part of a lot of other people's music because it wasn't meaningful to them as their childhood, but it has been something that's set my career apart from some other people. And maybe that's why they'll buy a ticket to one of my shows instead of someone else's show. And I think it's valuable to set yourself apart like that and make music that means something to you.
Oh my gosh, this is phenomenal. And this reminds me what you said before. Playing music you don't connect with is selling out. And it goes hand in hand with that. If you're not resonating with it, I think the audience can tell too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you look at people like Wynton Marsalis, and God rest his dad's soul. Ellis passed away
Yeah.
this week, and that was just such a huge, huge loss to the jazz world and, well,
Yeah.
and the world.
Yeah.
Um, but I look at someone like Wynton Marsalis. That guy was born. to play jazz. He was born to just be an ambassador for the tradition of jazz. He lives it, he breathes it, it's in his soul, you know? That's not what I was born to do. That's totally cool. We've got Wynton Marsalis.
Yeah.
I was born to bring a little more grit to it, and and I was born to play 3 chords in the truth instead of 72 chords in a song in the truth. It's like we all have these things that speak to us, and paths that we're meant to go through, And so I think it's totally cool. Find your path. Find what makes you special.
You know what's really cool, and I have a bunch of your albums and stuff. I really I especially love the latest album. We're going to talk about that in a bit. But when you solo, it's like I can feel like the 80s guitar. You know what I mean? I could feel that, and it's cool because I love that.
Yeah.
I remember I mentioned the band Journey before. I love the band Journey, and Neil Schon with his guitar solos. I mean, to me, those were epic. Those were epic solos. You could sing along with them.
Yeah. No, you totally could. It was a part of the song.
Yeah, and it's a
Yeah.
really important part of the song, and just like Clarence Clemens' solos, just like again we're kids from the 80s, right? So that's when they actually had saxophone on the regular radio. Go figure that one out. But
Yeah.
um,
Good times.
oh my God, yeah, I mean it was incredible. And even as a trumpet player, I was just like, oh man, I wish I had started off on saxophone. Hearing Supertramp, right? All those
Oh
those
yeah.
oh those amazing solos and stuff like that, and those
Huge fan.
solos.
Yeah.
Oh God, they became, to me, they defined the song. Now, maybe not for someone who isn't a horn player, but what defines songs for me are the horn solos in them.
Yeah,
And
I mean, some of the most amazing saxophone solos of all time were from rock bands. And, I looked back when I got the call to play with Springsteen for a night after Clarence Clemens passed away.
mm,
Um, I knew, like, okay, I had to play Spirit the night, and I was so psyched. I knew I had to play the solo from the record because Bruce Springsteen, I mean, he knows that those songs, those solos, are as much a part of the melody of the song as anything else. No one that's ever played in that band has played anything other than what's on the record. This is not jazz. This is not improvisation. This is a melody in the song. And I so respect that thought process of that music. It's not an improvised study. It's something else, and it's just so cool. And I many times in my music, I will strive to have the solo be a part of the song that just takes it a different place and opens it up.
I'm so glad that you said that because I recently did a Facebook Live where I talked about, there's always the question, if you're in a cover band, right? Do I play the recorded solo as it was played, or do I play my own thing? And it's a conundrum for some people because, for some solos, you feel like you have to, because
Yeah,
they're just, like you said, they're part of the song. For others, it's interesting. Like you take Billy Joel's songs and, the classic Phil Wood solo to Just the Way You Are. I mean, to me, that's an epic solo. And I always
yeah,
felt that I really need to play that solo when I perform, but I've known so many other people, and including, Mark Rivera, and including Richie Kanata, who don't play Phil Woods' solo. They may do use elements of it, but they'll do their own thing. So it's a little bit of a conundrum when you think about it. But then, you mentioned someone like Bruce Springsteen, and certain artists where you feel that you really should play, the recorded solo because of how it relates to the song as a whole. It wasn't, as you said, it was another melody. It wasn't like, it may have been improvised to start with, but it's not really looked at as a solo. It's looked at as a
yeah,
line.
yeah. And I think there are those songs, that just have become that over the years. What a cool thing to strive for, to play a solo that becomes a part of a song, or, craft a solo that you can, that really becomes just a part of history, as being, something that people keep singing when they're singing that song. And whether you're talking about, Junior Walker, who did Urgent, or whether you're talking about, Rio from Duran Duran,
Yeah.
those solos, people just keep singing the solo as, as they're singing the song with Duran Duran, the sax solo is just part of it, So I think that, it's one of those things that gets overlooked, I think, as, so many saxophonists grow up in kind of the jazz education system, and it's looked down upon, sometimes, to play a melody or play a part, that is already created for a solo. No, no, you have to create your own. But it's all right to look at different styles of music and adjust what's right and wrong, for that style of music. And I think I've had a window into that kind of thinking, because I've played for, a variety of different artists, and seen, a lot of different kind of mindsets, from R&B, playing with Tina Marie, to, super pop. I played with Duran Duran, or, rock and roll with Aerosmith or Bruce Springsteen. It's like they all view, their songs and their music in a different way, and you have to kind of go with that and learn from that, and hopefully, take it and make it part of your vocabulary and part of your, uh, you know, knowledge base.
Yeah, and I'm curious, since I'm going to go in this direction now. You mentioned a number of the people that you've performed with. Let's focus on Aerosmith for a second, because again, you're playing saxophone with them. This is a really like a hard rock type of band. And first of all, how did that come about for people that don't know? And how did you? I mean, I kind of know the answer, but how did you approach your solos, and what your performances with them?
Well, it came about. It's crazy. I got a call to do American Idol. Don Was, who's an incredible producer, called me and just said, "Hey, I'm producing this artist who's on American Idol, and we're doing old time rock and roll, and I need a sax solo." And he goes, "If you do the track, I think they're going to want you on the TV show. And I think 26 million people watch every week. I think it'd be cool for you to do." He was very nonchalant. And I just jumped at the chance. I thought it would be so much fun. And that first performance, we finished old time rock and roll, and Steven Tyler just went, "Hey, forget about you. Who's your sax player?" you know? And so all of a sudden, I was kind of the mystery sax player on American Idol, and I stayed around for a couple years as the featured saxophonist for a lot of different artists on American Idol. But at the end of the second season that I did, Philip Phillips had just won, and Steven Tyler called me, and I get this call, and he's just like, "We got to do this. We gotta make this happen. Time's running out." But I had no idea what he was talking about. But it came about that he wanted me to tour with Aerosmith, and they hadn't had a sax player since 1973. And he just wanted to make it a little more than just those guys. He wanted to open it up, and he wanted me to sing backgrounds with him as well, and just wanted to, make it a bigger party. So I ended up going on the road with them, and it was just, you know, total sheer rock and roll glory. It was great. I loved every second.
Oh my, I have to ask, any stories you can share?
Yeah, I have a ton. Yeah, for sure. If you tour with Aerosmith for like a day, you've got stories for sure. Yeah, we may need a bottle of wine and or two. But yeah, it was quite the adventure. Oh, and you asked me how I kind of approached playing with them.
Yeah.
Look, Joe Perry is their guitarist, and his wife came up to me when I first joined the tour, and she just said, "Look, I'm a little worried about this. I love your music, but this band is all testosterone. And I just don't want you taken away from that.
Oh, wow.
And, I looked at her and I went, there is no way anything could take away the testosterone in this band. And it's just not going to happen. So for me, soloing with that band was just floating over this, rock and roll just train. These guys are just a total train that keeps on rolling, as their song says. But I mean, they are just strong, and they're thoroughbreds, and they're just giving a pound of flesh every minute on stage. So you can't approach this, with a lot of nuance. You have to go in and just play and give 1,000% and sweat and have fun and get lost in it. You can't think too much. You can't think about what the chord changes are. You can't think about, technique or any of that. You just have to have fun. And that is what rock and roll is. It's abandon, and so let yourself go and let yourself just have a good time with it. But yeah, to give you a story, I got called into Steven Tyler's room. Hey, Steven wants to see you. Talk about something in the show, right? So okay, so I came to Steven's dressing room and went to walk in, and there's Steven there with no clothes on except almost like a G-string, but silk and flowy. Everything's hanging out. Um, and that's all that he has on. Not a sock, not a, glove, just this little, underwear thing that was barely underwear. So I looked at him and I was like, tell Steven that I'll come back when he has clothes on. Let me know. So I leave. I come back. And Steven's behind this dressing thing. So we're going over the song. And Joe Perry comes in. We're going over kind of the lay of the land of this one song that we're going to do that night. And he's like, okay, everyone got their part. Everyone cool? Yeah. I'm like, yep, we're good. And Steven, he's like, hey, and he looks out from behind the dressing thing, and he's like, I'm naked. So he just, he was like this butterfly, kind of childlike fun that just wanted to get away with stuff. He'd run down the halls half naked, and he just had fun. And so it was so funny. He was like, ha ha ha, I didn't put clothes on. I've been naked this whole time.
Well, thank God he hid behind like a dressing room type of thing.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, fine, you're naked. That's great.
But I made you cover up.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, this is going to be a great lead in to your amazing book, How to Play Madison Square Garden. And folks, I'm going to put a link in the show notes for this. I got this book a number of years ago, and if you want to be a performing artist, I don't care what genre, to me, this is the book to get, because it's not, you know what you're talking about. I mean, you perform with huge name people, and also yourself as well, selling out venues and all that kind of thing. I mean, there's chapters on like stage movement and awareness, the flow of the show, one-to-one communication, how to meet and lead the audience. It's all about it's the stuff that people don't talk about, and I wanted to bring out a couple things. And this is really good because you've kind of alluded to this. I'm in the chapter on soloing, and you talk about the challenge is to improvise in such a way that the audience can become involved and remain involved in the solo to the benefit of everyone. Play to your audience, not above them. For example, the pop audience will want to hear the solo from the record that they know and love, and the jazz audience will want to be moved by the technical brilliance of the performer. So this absolutely reiterates what we were saying before about soloing. And you also wrote, think of a solo in the same way as you do a complete show. There should be an opener, hills, valleys, and a closer. And, you go on, and you say, begin the solo by playing something that's relatively simple, musically infectious. Once you have their attention, you can now carefully lead them along by improvising music that they're able to grasp, take them on a journey. I think that's awesome.
Can't believe you're reading excerpts from my book. This is so cool. I love that. I love that you have my book, and just what an amazing thing. I wrote that book thinking, look, uh, I'm a graduate of Berklee College of Music. I have a degree in woodwind performance. One thing that there was not a class on at that point was actual performance. They gave us lessons with how to play our instrument. I took classes on the business of music, even,
Yeah.
or if I wanted to score a film, or, how to compose or how to arrange. But there was never a class on how to perform and how to be in front of an audience. And, as a working musician today, that's how most of the people that I know make a living. They make a living from playing live. Um, they make records, but that's not how they make money that pays their rent. It's playing live. So why wouldn't we have a class or some kind of clarified instruction on how to stand in front of an audience, or how to, create a show that's going to connect with people, that they're going to come back and see you again and again, and I just think that that's something that we all need to take into consideration. And I think a lot of times people just think, oh, well, look at that performer. They just have that it factor, and I could never, you can't learn that. You're just born with it. So that's why I wrote the book, because that's so untrue. You can totally learn that. It's no one's born with it. It's a learned thing.
It's a skill. Yeah, it's definitely a skill. And you're so right too, because yeah, there were the colleges that I went to, there were not even music business classes. I mean, I did take one with it was Mike Mossman, who was with the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra at the time, trumpet player and arranger, and like that was amazing. I mean, it was a really good class, but back then, very very few colleges had anything on music business, and certainly nothing on performance the way you've outlined in your book. And I'm thinking too, I don't know even if colleges today even cover this kind of stuff.
I don't think most do, but I just think, you know, being able to sit down and think about, what do I do to create the right performance, the right, you know, uh, situation for me as an artist. And we're all different. You could be a singer songwriter who just sits on a stool and plays, and that's meaningful, and that's the right thing. And how do they create a bond with the audience? Me as a saxophonist, uh, that's not classical or not jazz, it should be a different setting than someone else that is more classical or more jazz. And we all have to, I think long and hard about what we create as a setting for the people that come and see us. What are we going to play? What are we going to exude? What are our belief systems? It's like you have to go on stage and be who you are. And, I think the audience is super smart. They know when you're faking it, they know when you're uncomfortable, they know when you're trying to be something you're not. But so many times, if you'll walk up and you'll actually give yourself to an audience and let them get to know you and connect with them and look them in the eye, and really communicate with them honestly, and that can be via music, or it can be via talking to them. It works, and it's real, and people walk away feeling like they know you a little better, and they want to come to the next one, and they feel your music more because it's more meaningful, because they know you a little more. So there are all kinds of techniques in the book, from stage fright to moving on stage, to figuring out what to play in your set as opposed to what not to play, or when things go wrong, what do you do? But I think that all of it needs to be thought about. It's something important that we can all have in our arsenal as a well-rounded performer.
Absolutely. And I really think, again, this should be required reading for any performing musician. And, the word that comes to mind that we haven't said yet, but that you're alluding to is being authentic. And, that's
Yeah,
like a big word, in the last 5 years or so,
great
being
word.
authentic. Yeah. Just being authentic to what you do. And, I had a question from before, when Joe Viola said to you, okay, when you're starting your own band, when did you start your own band? And did you ever feel the need at that time? Because it is hard to start a band with just original music. It's because people don't know
Yeah.
you yet. So did you ever find yourself having to, play the jazz standards or play covers or anything like that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, I started my own band when I was in Boston, going to Berkeley, and I started it in my probably third year in college. And it was guitar, keyboards, drums, um, and bass, and me. And we would play my songs that I wrote, and we would play other people's songs. And I, at that point, was playing everything from Thelonious Monk
Mm.
to the Yellow Jackets to Santana.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Very eclectic.
Very eclectic, right? And that was just, for my band. Once I moved to Los Angeles after I graduated, it was the same thing. We'd play my songs. Uh, my keyboard player, actually from college, Tommy Coster Jr., he moved out to LA because I begged him because I didn't know anyone out here. And we'd play some of his songs, and we'd play, anything we thought was cool, and that could be any song one of us would bring in and just be like, "Ooh, this is awesome." So if it mattered to us, it got played. So that was kind of, it could be any style of music, just as long as we kind of made it ours, and then we'd push it out. But that's how it started. And I think, as students and as young players, there's nothing wrong with, playing other people's songs and making them your own and finding yourself in them. And I just think it's a great thing. I mean, to this day, I always play a few covers in my set. I've been doing Facebook Live shows from here, and I just did a Bill Withers tune this past week as a
Yeah,
tribute to him because he passed away, and he was a friend and just a great songwriter. But I just think that it's a great thing to cover other people's music.
absolutely. And gosh, what a loss, right? Bill Withers.
Yeah.
I- it's astounding. And as we're recording this, this is mid-April, the year 2020, and it is unprecedented times. We have this pandemic that's basically shut down the world. And um, as if you're a performing musician, and there's certainly other careers out there that are absolutely affected by this too, just as badly. But if you're a performing musician, you've seen all your performances canceled for the near future, and depending on where you live in the world, some places are shut down for many months, some for maybe just a couple of months. But you've been innovative. And I'm going to ask you for some advice too, for those people that are listening that are performers, basically mostly performers, but you've been innovative with the Facebook Lives, and not even just the Facebook Lives, but you also have other businesses that are attached to your brand. So could you talk about how someone who is predominantly a performer, this is different times, how can they survive, and some of the innovative things that you've done?
Well, I know you mentioned earlier before we got on, we were talking about the fact that I have a wine and music business,
Yeah.
as kind of my secondary my secondary life. But I married a wine guy, and what a cool thing. I got older and wiser, and found a wine guy. So my husband Eric has been an executive in the wine business for his whole life, and that basically means that he's run cool wineries. So, he's been like the director of marketing or the director of the brand for things like Mum Napa or Kendall Jackson or Gary Farrell, and just some really cool wine brands. So here we are, come last year, and we were like, you know, I play music for a living. I play to people, and it's this, joyous thing. You go out and you play music, and people are drinking and, having a blast and dancing and everything. Um, my husband's in wine. Why don't we start a wine and music business? We sit home and drink wine, and I'm invariably making a little playlist for it. Like, oh, this is some big, amazing red wine. I've got this is like soul music, So I'm playing Otis Redding and Booker T. Jones and, you know, a bunch of the Stax catalog, and, that pairs with this wine. So that's what we did.
That's cool.
He finds all this cool wine, and then I think of it in music terms because that's how I think. And so we'll brand each wine with kind of how it sounds. We have one called Viva la Rock. And one of my friends did the artwork, and it's this painting of this guy just rocking out. It's all ink dripping down.
Oh,
And I paired a playlist to it, and you get the playlist on Spotify, and you listen to this music as you drink the wine. And the music's everything from the Rolling Stones to AC/DC to Led Zeppelin. I mean, it's just a blast. And so it's been really fun for us to, like you said, be authentic, be ourselves. I don't have to be a wine person. I love wine, but it's not my specialty of what I do for a living. Music is.
yeah.
So he can be authentic to himself, bring wine to it. I can bring the music, and it's super fun. At a lot of our concerts, we'll do a music and wine tasting before the concert.
Oh, wow.
So people will come in, drink some wine, get into it. I'll play them some music that goes with the wine, and then I'll go do my show with my band. So it really does just kind of heighten the whole, concert experience for me. It just adds some fun, and it does give me, something else to do, besides music, and it's a fun creative outlet. So I think if you can find something that's authentic like that you can believe in, that's meaningful to you, then I think it's a cool thing to do. And like you said, we've been doing Facebook lives every Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Pacific time. That's been our way to connect with people. Because you know what? Whether you and I are sitting in a room together like we normally would be, drinking wine and playing music, or whether we're, on Zoom or Facebook Live, the same things bring us together. And it's usually music and wine. So why not do it even when we're apart? It'll make us feel like we're pretty normal. So that's what we've been doing every Tuesday night is, he'll do a little wine intermission, and I'll play a bunch of songs that people have requested during the week. And it's super fun. It sure makes me feel a little more normal, like I'm doing what I am normally doing, instead of, kind of stuck in my house going, huh.
And it's awesome, and I've attended them, and it's really so cool. And the great thing, you go outside and you play outside when it's not raining, of course, because we've had a lot of rain. But
Oh, yeah.
but but you go
Oh,
outside and you see the neighbors, and
yeah.
we're all socially distanced, but you're also bringing joy to the neighbors as well.
You know what? We all bring joy in our little ways. We've been doing a 5:30 thing with all of our neighbors that will come out to our porch, and we're all about 20 feet away, and we've all got our glass of wine, and we'll just stand out there and go, "What'd you do today?
Oh, how
Yeah, what's
cool.
going on? What did you hear in the news?" And it's our way of just kind of being social while you can't really be social with most of your friends. So it's been fun. So for our Facebook lives, it usually ends right uh, when my neighbors would be getting together anyway. So I'll give them a tip off like, "Hey, come out for, our little cocktail hour, and I'll be out there playing." They're like, "That's great." So they watch the whole thing, and then they come out and cheer me on for the last song.
That is so cool. I lately I've been doing the my own version of I call it the porch concerts. So I'll just
Nice.
set up my wireless Bose Bluetooth speaker and, have some backing tracks, and I just play. And I was thinking a few weeks ago, gosh, I was taking a walk around my neighborhood and it was so quiet. It was like eerily quiet. I'm like, this is so quiet. It's deafening. And I said, you know what? Let me just go outside and play. Let me just play whatever. I'm just going to play some songs. All gigs are canceled. Let me just, keep I'm practicing, yeah, but it'll give me something to look forward to. And,
Yeah.
I've got a lot of people in the neighborhood that are not well medically.
Mm.
So it'll, hopefully give them something, inspire them, give them something to look forward to. So I just went outside and I played. And then people, a lot of people like to walk around here. And so people would stop and they keep their social distance and they'd hang out. Some people would drive by in cars and they'd stop and whatever. And so I was like, all right, you know what? Maybe I need to do this regularly. So now I'm doing it every Saturday at like 5 o'clock. I just open up the front door, go right on the porch right there and just play, and it's fun. It's cool. And I love that neighbor idea, where everybody's just like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? With our social distance and stuff like that.
I think what an awesome idea, porch concerts. It's great. And we need each other right now. I mean, that's how we get through everything. It's the power of connection. And whether it's, the pandemic or whether it's just, whatever normal life is, it's all about connection. So I think whatever we can do to connect with people and love them and be loved by them and feel that, that incredible power that we're used to feeling, more on an everyday basis in person. And, I'm a hugger. I'll sit there and hug people. And, so this is interesting being so far away from everyone, but we can still connect. And I think that's great. We've all got to find our way that is right and is good to connect.
Oh my gosh. And that's another theme too. So like our first theme was really being true to yourself and being authentic. And the next thing is about connection. And again, your book is about that too, because if you're not connecting with your audience, you're not going to, you're not going to have success, later on. So authenticity, connection, and also innovation too, it was smart that you started that business last year, especially for now, because it's, as I was saying before, a lot of concerts are just canceled, outright for many months. And living in California, we're probably going to be stay at home a little bit longer than some other states. And we have to find innovative ways to make that connection with our audience.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's fun to see different ways. Like Theo Wanne, I have my mouthpiece
Yes.
that Theo Wanne and I made together. And he's been doing this series of, okay, everyone's stuck at home. So show me what you're practicing. Show me what you're playing. So he's had a bunch of his players. It's kind of a cool thing you should check out. Do, like what they're thinking about at home, what they're playing. And I mean, some of them are pretty lengthy, some of them are quicker, but it's been really interesting just to kind of sit and watch things that people wouldn't normally show you. He's got some great players up there. So I think it's been a really fun way to kind of see a little bit into people's lives that maybe you just see on stage or you listen to on a record or something, but it's a different connection that we're getting with people right now that if you're looking around, you're going to see some cool stuff.
Yeah, and his series is called Stuck in the Shed, and
That's what it is. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's again really innovative. And just go to his website theowanne.com. The Theo TheoWanne.com and sign up for the newsletters, and then you're gonna get those. And it's really cool stuff. And even folks like Jody Espina from Jody Jazz and Rulon Brown from Key Leaves, what they're doing is when people, even though many music stores are not open right now, people still want to buy mouthpieces or saxophone accessories, saxophone care, saxophone maintenance stuff. And so if a person normally buys from a particular music dealer, what those folks are doing is as you're checking out online, you're giving credit to the music store that you would normally buy from, and they'll get the credit as well to try to help keep these music stores alive and afloat. So
That's a really great thing. I didn't know that. That's really awesome.
Yeah, that just started pretty much this week. and great way to support music stores. We always need our music stores. It's just so important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So now let me actually let's digress to your mouthpiece, because that, even though it's not very new, but it's still really important. You have your own Theo Wanne brand of Mindi Abair mouthpiece.
I do. And that it's just awesome. I mean, as a saxophonist, you know what you want from a mouthpiece, what you want to sound like. We all have this innate sense of the tone we want to create. And, you hope that you find a mouthpiece that can fulfill that, or even take it farther. And most of us are usually wanting more. We're always, but maybe I could do this and it could be a little better, or maybe it'd be easier to hit those altissimo notes if I had that mouthpiece. Let's see. So it's usually this adventure to try and find that. I was playing a mouthpiece that I had customized over years, that was an Oleg mouthpiece. And, I was just kind of looking for more, and thought, maybe I could it could be easier to get this kind of power and resonance. And I've been talking with Theo, and I really love Theo, and his heart, his whole energy is just, he's just a cool guy. And so it struck up this friendship with us about, how we felt about saxophone and sound and tone and all of it. We just became total geeks together. And I was just like, what if we made like the people's mouthpiece? Made a mouthpiece that was a little less expensive than your normal one, because your normal one is amazing, but it's so expensive. Most people can't do that. I'm a professional and I think it's expensive. And this is how I make my living. So I was like, let's make a mouthpiece that makes the resonance and the, just that tone and that incredible, energy that comes through a great mouthpiece, make it accessible to people. And so we started working on a mouthpiece. We worked on it for between 2 and 3 years,
Mm.
that we would get together. I would come up to Bellingham, Washington, where he is, and we'd work on it. And he'd drill, and I'd play, and he'd file and drill more. He even came out on the road with me with Aerosmith for a little bit,
Wow.
and we'd work on it, in between shows and stuff. And there came a day when my horn and mouthpiece were stolen,
Mm.
and I had nothing. Like, I had a one-off customized mouthpiece that I played. And I called Theo. I was like, I can replace my Yamaha horn, but I can't replace the mouthpiece I had. Um, I think the universe is saying that this mouthpiece that we've been toying with, our ultimate mouthpiece for the people, it's time to finish it, like now. And we finished it within the week. And I played it for a year before it went to the marketplace.
Mm.
And we put it out at the next NAMM show, and it's become one of his best-selling mouthpieces. And for me, I really, it's the best mouthpiece I've ever played. It's unbelievable. Um, I watched people play it for the first time, other than me, at that NAMM show when we launched it. And I would watch people play a couple notes, and their eyes would get big, and they'd stop playing, and they'd just look at me and go, "Oh my God." It was that kind of just rocket ship kind of mouthpiece that made it so easy to play. And it's not me that did that. Theo is just this mad scientist genius with physics. But I would say to him, I need more bottom end. I need beef, I need that big sound. But yet I want to reach those altissimo notes and not worry about it and not think about it and not have to clench up. I don't want to have to work. I just want it to happen. And then we just work on the sonic, you know, texture of that mouthpiece. And it's unbelievable. And it's so even. The tuning is perfect. And it's just from top to bottom, just a lot of resonance and tone. So I think that's been the success of it. And it's just been a super fun project. And I've got a crazy amazing mouthpiece to play every night.
That's awesome. And I know it's for alto. Do they have any designs for thinking about making it for tenor?
No, I mean, I play mostly alto, but I actually play one of his other mouthpieces on tenor, and he has so many great tenor pieces that I haven't really gone into that. But the alto was what we started with, and we have talked about coming out with a version 2 because he and I have continued the quest to even make it better.
Oh, wow.
And he came to me this year and he was like, "Look, a few of those things you wanted early on and I didn't know how to do, I know how to do now."
Oh.
So I actually went up there when I played Seattle in February, and I played some of the prototypes of kind of a version 2 of my mouthpiece, and they blew my mind. I wanted to walk away with the piece of plastic that he had that he had made the prototype, and he's like, "No, leave the piece of plastic here. You'll have your mouthpiece soon." So hopefully I'll be playing a real prototype of my version 2 mouthpiece, and hopefully it will launch next year at NAMM.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, what mouthpiece do you play on tenor?
I play his Durga mouthpiece.
Is it the Durga 3 or is it it's just the Durga?
That's a great question. I have no idea. That's awesome. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I gotta go look at that.
See, equipment is important, but it's not the only thing.
No, it's not the only thing. It's funny. I mean, my alto, I have, just sweat and bled for, all the equipment on it and everything. And my tenor, it's like I kind of go with it and the same thing with the Barry, it's just kind of like, yeah. So the attention to detail sometimes is on one horn more than the others.
Well, that's because you play that mostly. And actually, you know what? I am curious about. I'm not an equipment geek, but what reeds do you play on?
I play on Laveau's medium soft.
Okay. All right. So you're
Yeah.
on the cane.
And
Okay.
my mouthpiece that I play is a 6. We make it in 6, 7, and 8, but it's I've got a smaller opening. So
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. And
yeah.
now I'm going to digress again. I had said it before we were on officially. Um, your album No Good Deed is awesome. I mean, many of your albums are awesome, but it is so cool because it just reminds me, as we've had this conversation, like it just reminds me of the feel good times of 80s rock and all that kind of stuff. And I know it's a blues album, but I get that vibe from it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got a lot of classic rock elements to it. And a lot of us in the band have those kind of leanings. So, the last 4 records that I've made have been as a band, as Mindi Abair and the Bone Shakers. And it's been fun to kind of, go into a little bit different direction and go into, kind of delve into my blues and rock roots and just go after that. It's been fun to do a bunch of, blues festivals, rock festivals, and just go up there and get crazy. So these records have let us do that. And No Good Deed, it's basically a lot of power and a lot of abandon, and it's just so much fun. Not that there aren't a few ballads on it, there are, but it was a super fun record to make, just like our other one, the East West Sessions. But just to open up and kind of make music that speaks to you. It's not a normal saxophonist's record necessarily, but I look back to the early days of saxophone, and I know that it was a lot of rock and roll,
Yeah.
with the kind of early days of those gritty, King Curtis and Junior Walker, and a lot of the early days of rock and roll. Saxophone was just as integral an instrument as electric guitar. So, it was a killer time, and not a lot of people are playing like that right now. It's moved on to kind of smoother sounds or a more contemporary feel or a cleaner feel, and that's great. It's awesome. But I wanted to go back and I wanted to relive it, and I wanted to, kind of put out that energy like we talked about earlier with Aerosmith, that you're just giving all of yourself, 1,000% of yourself at every moment, and kind of pay tribute to those early days of rock and roll.
That's yeah, I absolutely I could definitely feel that. And I actually have the East West Sessions in my hand right now, and another great album. I wanted to talk about you also established, well, first of all, this is on Pretty Good for a Girl Records, but you also established the website for that too. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. There's a song on the East West Sessions album that is called "Pretty Good for a Girl," and you and I were talking about this earlier. That
Yeah.
sometimes that it's odd to be a girl doing what you're doing, and sometimes you don't. But I've spent a lifetime, kind of having people come up and go, "Whoa, you're pretty good for a girl."
Yep, yep, yep.
And it's all very well meaning, they're meaning it as a compliment, but you've just got to laugh. And I've had the guys in my band just stand around and go, "Oh my God." you know, and it's funny, that people have that reaction, because they don't expect maybe a woman to be a powerful player, or, a player that can, be up there with the guys and it's seamless. And so it is funny to see people kind of react. So I had to write a song about it. That's what we do as songwriters and artists, right?
Yeah.
So I wrote a song about my story, and it became a big song in the blues world. Joe Bonamassa sat in with us for the song and played with us on the record, and it's become a song that I've just played every night since we recorded it in concert, and it's like an anthem for us. So for me, I really realized that we as women have to champion each other,
Yeah.
and we have to be in each other's corner, and we have to celebrate each other. And it starts with us. And I really think that will change a lot of the misconceptions of what a woman's supposed to be, or what a great saxophonist is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And those things are changing. That glass ceiling is shattering around us, and we're all a part of it. And I'm proud that we're all in this together and a part of it. So I created a website, prettygoodforagirl.net, and it just celebrates women. And I'll put up an article every once in a while about a woman that I think is amazing, whether you know her name or not. But people that I just think are incredible, and it's fun for me. And I just think it's one more thing to really celebrate women, and be a part of that. Being a part of the right side of history. It's good for all of us.
Definitely, absolutely, and it also reminds me too. It was in 2015, yeah, when I pretty much first got out here, and it was the She Rocks Awards, and you were being
Yeah.
honored. Yeah, that was really cool. You won I think the Mad Skills Award or something like that. It's a great show. It's at NAM. It's off of the NAM campus, so to speak, and it's just a great night. It's a lot of fun, and it's featuring women in the industry. But that was really cool, by the way.
I absolutely love the woman who puts that on. Laura Whitmore is incredible. And boy, I think she's done it for 9 years now. I co-hosted it last year and
Yeah.
performed as well. And just the women that she brings together and celebrates, it's a total love fest. And you know what? We don't get that all the time. I'm usually the only girl around, and that can be fun. But let me tell you, a whole night of amazing women, who are talented and articulate and overachievers, and just will sit in the back and talk makeup and music and thoughts, and it's super super inspiring.
Yeah, and that band, killer.
Killer. Killer. Yeah, they're
Absolutely.
amazing.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get to some upcoming, projects that you have going on that you alluded to before we were officially on.
I know. You know what? I have a new record in the can.
Woohoo! Very cool.
I know. It's so cool. I mean, right when we were kind of first hearing about, coronavirus, and we should be careful because this could be a big deal, um, we were just starting to record the record. And so, shelter in place hadn't started, none of that had started. And I got together with some of the guys in my band and some friends that I've had since college. The guy that was in my very first band at Berkeley when I started my band on drums, Abe Laboriel Jr., came in and recorded with us. He's had a million years now as Paul McCartney's drummer. Um,
Wow.
I know, right? Not a bad gig, huh? But he came in and recorded, and just it was absolutely amazing to be in the studio and just be making music and be a part of this whole love fest of new songs and new ideas. And yeah, it was so fun to get out. So I've got 99% of it done now. I'm going to finish up some vocals here at the house, but it's going to be probably half instrumental, saxophone uh, melodies and half vocal. And it's got some rootsy love, it's got some bluesy love, but it's also got a lot of soul and little jazz here and there. But mostly kind of three chords and the truth.
I love that.
But it's nice. I feel like this is a solo record. It's not with a band, and it's music that I've written over the past couple years, and I feel like it's a real coming together of who I've always been as a musician and an artist, and who I've kind of been over the past couple of years that was definitely more rock and blues, and it's hopefully bringing together the best of all of that into one package. So I'm incredibly proud of it. I think it'll be out probably late summer, early fall. So we'll see the way the world is going and when the right time to put it out is.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that too. And do you have a title for it?
Yeah, it's going to be called Forever.
Cool.
So yeah, I kind of viewing like Mindi Abair forever.
That's smart. That's cool. And you're gonna have to come up with one of your later albums. You're gonna have to call it Three Chords and the Truth, or a song Three Chords and the Truth.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it's like it's a way to delineate, from uh, I played with Bobby Lyle, who's a keyboardist. I mean, there's three chords in every bar for him, So for a lot of my songs, it's three chords in the song. So it kind of delineates the approach. It's a more feel based approach. It's a more emotion based approach than kind of the headier chordful structures.
Yeah, definitely. And I got to tell you, this interview was absolutely amazing. I mean, you shared some amazing stuff, amazing advice, stories, and I feel like we've known each other forever. And we really didn't, beforehand. I've met you a couple of times, but I'm just so glad that you took the time today, and just really awesome stuff.
No, thank you so much. And it's good, we're all in this together. We saxophonists have to, all stick together and be each other's friend and see each other through the rough times. So I love that we could spend this time while we're, home, kind of doing what we're going to do, uh, getting to know each other a little more. So if I don't see you before, I'll see you at NAMM next year. I know.
Absolutely. And before we go, can you tell people how to find you online, your website, and also, whether you're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram?
Yeah, of course. You can find me online at mindyabair.com. And you spell that MindiAbair.com. And I'm basically on every, social media site, Facebook.com at Mindi Abair, Instagram at Mindi Abair, Twitter at Mindi Abair, uh, YouTube official Mindi Abair.
Okay.
So, if you've missed some of our Facebook lives over the past couple weeks, you can just go to my Facebook page. It's all on there. or you can go to my YouTube page and they're all on there too. And, so definitely keep up. And if go on mindyabair.com, get on my email list, and you'll know when we're playing in the area and, good stuff like that. And when the record comes out. Woohoo!
That's right. That's right. And also, that's how I also found out about your Facebook live sessions, because you had it in your, your email and your newsletter.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yep.
absolutely. And also for prettygoodforagirl.net, right?
Yes, absolutely. And if you need to drink more, which I know people are drinking a little bit more these days, you can check out our wine and music company, which is reservetastings.com, and Facebook and Instagram at Reserve Tastings.
Cool. Listen, Mindi,
Yeah.
this has been absolutely amazing. I can't thank you enough for taking the time and sharing. It was just really fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.